Bill Gates is without a doubt one of the wealthiest people to ever walk this earth. If you're watching this, chances are you grew up knowing that Mr. Gates was the richest man in the world, and he remains so for most of your life. While it's common nowadays for the tile to move from one billionaire to the next in literally a matter of days or weeks, the Microsoft founder sat unchallenged at the top for a very long time. Subconsciously, many of us thought that was just the nature of things, that it was always going to be that way. Bill Gates has ended the year as Forbes' richest person a record 16 times. He first topped the list in 1997 after displacing the Walton family, the founders of Walmart. That year, his wealth was calculated to be $36 billion. 2 years later, in 1999, his net worth had ballooned to $90 billion. That was right before the dot-com bubble, which soon wiped out from his wealth the equivalent of the GDP of a small nation in just a matter of weeks. The poor man ended the year 2000 with a net worth of $60 billion. He was still at the top of the Forbes list and remained there until 2007, when Carlos Slim of Mexico briefly overtook him.
That's my spot.
Gates took back his spot in 2009, but he would relinquish that the next year before returning in 2014, 15, 16, and 17.
Hello, old friend.
Today, he is still incredibly wealthy, but the prospects of him topping the list again are quite slim. As I'm making this video, Gates is the 6th richest person on Earth, and Forbes estimates his net worth to be around $105 billion. But wait, that does not sound right. In 1999, Bill Gates was worth $90 billion. How is it that his net worth has grown so modestly over such a long period of time, now approaching 24 years? If a banker offered me 17% returns after 24 years, I'd politely suggest he finds another job. It gets worse because, after 1999, it took close to 20 years for his net worth to reach $90 billion again. It only happened in 2018. Put yourself in similar shoes. Imagine seeking your future and finding out that in 20 years, you'll be poorer than you are right now. Must really suck. It gets even more curious for Bill Gates when you compare Forbes' richest list in 1997, the year he first topped it, with the 2023 list. The first thing you'll notice is that it looks like a totally different list. In fact, only Gates and Warren Buffett appear both times. That's a good thing for Gates, and points to his consistency. But that's not the point of this video. This video is about what could have been. You look at the 2023 list and realize one thing. Half of those in the top 10 made almost all of their fortune after 1997. At least 3 of them were not even millionaires when Gates first topped the list. I mean, Elon Musk only made his first million in 1999. He went on to overtake Mr. Gates bigly, before losing $200 billion, almost twice Gates' net worth. But he is still somehow way richer than him. It's fascinating because this did not have to end up this way. In fact, it very easily could have ended up very different. Bill Gates, like most of us, does not remember when he first met most of his friends. But he has never forgotten July 5th, 1991. It was the day he was introduced to Warren Buffett. Buffett was friends with a Washington Post editor who happened to be friends with Gates' parents. And it was she who took the veteran investor down to visit the Gates family. On that day, Bill was on vacation at Hood Canal in Washington state and had no intention to interrupt it for a meeting with a Wall Street investor.
Look, he just buys and sells pieces of paper. That's not real value added. I don't think we'd have much in common.
He argued with his mother, who insisted that he had to take this meeting. Eventually, he was persuaded, but promised to only drop by for 2 hours, as he had work to do in the office. To be fair, Buffett was not thrilled to meet Gates either.
What the hell are we going to spend all day doing with these people? How long do we have to stay to be polite?
He complained as they drove there. The two men have a 25-year age gap between them and work in totally different fields. On paper, there was no way this was going to be a productive meeting, but it was. The investor was asking all the right questions. Questions no one else had ever asked the then Microsoft CEO. Like, if you were building IBM from scratch, how would it look different? Gates had questions of his own too, famously asking him to recommend good business books. And, would you guess, Business Adventures by John Brooks was top of the list. And even today, it remains Gates' favorite business book. After many hours of talking, they had developed what would turn out to be a lifelong friendship. To this day, it has been a very consequential friendship, that they have gone on to do great things, especially in philanthropy. But this is a video about how meeting Buffett and taking his investment advice changed the trajectory of Gates' finances. To get a clear picture, it's worth remembering how the young computer programmer got his start. Bill Gates co-founded Microsoft with his friend and schoolmate Paul Allen in 1979. For a few years before that, the two were just running a scrappy outfit, taking software commissions just to keep the lights on. Microsoft's first real business came when they wrote an operating system for the Altair 8800, an early computer made by an Albuquerque-based electronics company. They pitched the software to them, and surprisingly, the company agreed to distribute it. This early business convinced Gates to drop out of Harvard and concentrate on his new company. 2 years later, in 1981, Microsoft released MS-DOS, and this would be the foundation software, the one that paved the way for the Microsoft that we know today. Unlike other computer companies of the day, and even more so today, Bill Gates avoided taking venture capital money. They were cash positive pretty much from the moment they took the Altair job. However, a few years after founding, they decided to take some outside cash. They brought in venture capitalist Dave Marquette, who invested $1 million for a 5% stake. Not that Microsoft needed the money though. The point was to bring in an adult to the team, someone who actually knew what he was doing.
We picked one in the Valley. A guy named Dave Marquardt came on our board and did a fantastic job. That money sat in the bank, and it's still in the bank today, so it was not for anything to do with capital, but rather just to join the team. He's still on the board of Microsoft and is still extremely helpful as a lot of important decisions get made.
Just take a moment to internalize how rare that is in the tech world. A startup not only doesn't need several rounds of funding, but is actually profitable from day one. In 1985, the year before its IPO, Microsoft reported a net income of $24 million. That's about $65 million adjusted for inflation. After the IPO, Bill Gates made just $1.6 million from the shares he sold, but retained a 45% stake in the company, valued at $350 million then. Paul Allen was the second largest shareholder with 25%, and Steve Ballmer owning 7% of the company. Microsoft stock had a stellar performance, and a year later, Bill Gates was officially a billionaire. He would hold on to his shares until he met the Oracle of Omaha, who rubbed off some of his investment strategies on him. He convinced him to invest billions in Berkshire Hathaway, and today, Gates and his foundation are amongst the top shareholders in the company. Berkshire Hathaway also makes up the bulk of Gates' stock portfolio, accounting for more than half. Through his private investment from Cascade Investment, which he founded 4 years after meeting Buffett, Gates has adopted a similar investment philosophy as his mentor. I'm not faulting Bill Gates for pursuing a diversified portfolio. After all, that is literally what every investment manager advises. It is also completely possible that even without Buffett's input, Gates would have taken a similar trajectory and not put all his eggs into one basket. But what if he did? What if he never sold his Microsoft shares? After the IPO, as mentioned, Gates owned 45% of Microsoft. The company had issued consistent dividends ever since, which means Bill Gates would never have been cash poor. For example, if he still held those shares in 2022, he would have taken home a mind-numbing $8 billion plus just by doing nothing at all. After selling and diluting his shares over the years, Gates now only owns just over 1% of Microsoft, which means his 2022 dividends was only $250 million or thereabouts. A far cry from what he could have earned. And if you thought the missed dividends were bad, wait till you hear about his net worth. If Bill Gates never aspired to be more like Warren Buffett, if he did not go on a Microsoft selling spree, he could be worth a staggering $880 billion based on Microsoft's $1.95 trillion market capitalization as I'm making this video. At the peak of Microsoft's stock price in November of 2021, Bill Gates would have been worth $1.1 trillion. making him the first trillionaire in history. In the history of wasted opportunities, I think that one takes the cake.